Thank you for being here tonight, joining us for the first public visioning session as part of Mashpee Commons by Design. In a few minutes, Russ Preston from our team is going to give a little presentation, talk a little bit more about how this visioning session is going to work. I just wanted to take a quick minute to introduce the other members of the Mashpee Commons team that are here tonight. My name is Mary Durr, Marketing Director at Mashpee Commons. Tom Fronti here to my left is the Director of Building and Construction at Mashpee Commons. John Renz, Director of Leasing. John Connell is here somewhere. He's our resident architect. And we have several elected officials here tonight who we're so pleased to see could join us, including Town Manager Ronnie Collins. We have a few selectmen here, Andrew Gottlieb, Town Planner Tom Fadala. Am I forgetting him? Tom O'Hara. Yeah, so thank you everyone for being, Tony Simon, of course, from our Mashpee Commons team as well. And Russ, who's about to give the presentation, he has quite an extensive urban planning background, town planning background. He worked with Mashpee Commons as an architect for many, many years before going on to start his own urban planning firm. So he's really the in-house expert on creating amazing spaces to live and thrive. And he's going to lead the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. It's a great room. Thanks, everyone, for coming out and sharing your Tuesday night with us. How many folks are residents of Mashpee? Just show of hands. All right. How many folks visit Mashpee Commons once a week? Okay. All right. So we all know Mashpee Commons quite well. So tonight is really the kickoff of a process that's really looking at the future of Mashpee Commons and how a community-led vision for that future can inform development and the creation of new open space and all of the amenities that we've come to love, and ones that we don't know about that we need to learn from you that we can create. So really, we're calling this Mashpee Commons by Design because we really want to learn from the community and then by design create that future for Mashpee Commons that everyone has contributed to. So Mashpee Commons today, as that show of hands just showed us, is really used by a lot of folks in the community. And in my travels around the country, I mentioned Mashpee, and people know about Mashpee Commons. And I think it's a successful place because the public life is there. Folks enjoy spending time there. Yes, you go there to buy things and eat dinner and all, but I think the team and really to the credit over the decades have really cared for design and the physical art of building, from the capitals to the little details that you find, so that folks feel comfortable there. But what folks don't often realize is this is where it started. How many folks remember? How many folks were around when that was there? All right, so less hands, but this is called I'm going to put on my planner hat for a second, but this is called a gray field. It's essentially a field of gray asphalt and then a building stuck in the middle. And in planning parlance, these have over the last few decades have been studied and realized that these are really unproductive forms of real estate development. And as you can see from Mashpee Commons, actually creating it into a real walkable neighborhood is much more vibrant. And this has been, Mashpee's been studied over the years for this process. And going back to one of the earliest master plans that we could find of Mashpee Commons, and this idea of creating a shopping street and a walkable neighborhood. So a lot of folks have sort of asked the question, you have a master plan, why do this process? And really, as folks can tell, this has taken a long time, and we really want to figure out of all the hundreds of sort of master plans, what are the plans that actually resonate with the community most? And what are the ideas that we can actually get real clear implementation strategies behind? Because it's very difficult to build this type of development. I can get into that more later. And going back to the idea of civic life. It's the idea of, you know, the fountain and the welcoming sort of amenities. And how can we add to that with what you all as the community want to do, or what's there now that isn't really functioning well that we can improve? And then, you know, the most important thing for us is, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, what shop is in that building, but what happens in this outdoor room. And if you go around New England, you see some of these, you know, remarkable places that, you know, people, you know, they make postcards of and all. And oftentimes is of these parks or these main streets. And what other characteristic types of places should Mashpee Commons have in the future? And then, you know, Mary has a lot to do with this, and the folks at Mashpee Commons, but the programming, you know, what happens in civic life, you know, the culture, and how can we expand on that more? We started in this sort of preparing for tonight's meeting, talked to a lot of folks and said that's actually really important, not just, you know, what shops are coming in. We're actually more interested in what other types of cultural activities and the like might you want to have. So just a brief history, you know, these are the brand new buildings up on Market Street. You know, this is going down to Joe's Fishing Green. And these are the first of the more residentially focused buildings. And what the team at the Commons have learned over the last several years, really going back to almost 2007 when these were first permitted, is that the regulations that allow us to build these buildings are really working against the vision of creating a walkable Main Street. And a lot of, call it brain damage, in just, you know, getting those buildings built has caused us to rethink how do we approach future phases going up Market Street. And we can get into that in a lot more detail later tonight if you'd like. But the idea is that how can the character of these buildings continue to march up the street, but then what happens next? And that was sort of, you know, if we're having a hard time with the 40B that is being used to permit this, what other opportunities are there to work with the community to figure out what the vision is, and then, you know, what types of ways to implement that, everything from zoning to other issues around implementation. So, and this brings up sort of another issue is, you know, if you go back to our original photo, you know, this is all commercial land. And just to remind folks, when that original master plan was done, you know, the residential is still not by right allowed in this section of town. In order to create a mixed-use walkable neighborhood like so many New England villages and towns, you need residential. So there's this issue, this sort of disconnect between local zoning and a implementation strategy with creating this vision for a walkable place. This is a little blurry, I apologize. We tried to fix it beforehand, but this is essentially a map you have on your table right now. And what the buildings are here are the existing, in sort of that yellow-orange color, are the existing buildings. And then everything that's sort of what we call the study area is in the red dashed line. And then we've tried to include a good portion of the context, because we think it's actually really important how Mashpee Commons connects to the adjacent communities as well. So that's today. So, you know, just to quickly orient you, some of the things that we've emerged are some big questions. And the first for us is, you know, this idea of a neighborhood. And, you know, continuing to build housing that the community needs, from affordable to workforce to market rate. And what are the shapes and sizes of that? These are mostly apartment buildings, but it's townhouses, it's other things that the community might need for housing. And we can get into that a little bit more. And then, you know, the fishing green here, Job's Fishing Green, what happens there? You know, there's a number of other sort of community, you know, parks and squares in the Commons, but what do you want to do in that place? And that's really what we could talk about. This is one idea that Randall Emai, who's been an architect working on the Commons for decades, and conversations with folks has come up with. Is, you know, this is a traditional sort of New England common, you know, where lots of different things can happen. And then what are the activities, uses, and types of housing or other buildings that surround it? So we want to hear from you, what's your vision for that place? And then as you move sort of back further into what we call the Whiting's neighborhood, which is named after the sort of the footpath, the ancient way there called Whiting's Road, is what happens in these types of parks and what types of residents might go around there. And this all builds on the long-term goal that has been around since the beginning, is how do you create a New England, a Cape Cod, walkable neighborhood, that's vibrant and folks can live, work, and play in it. And you go back to these old postcards of the Cape and you see these types of experiences. How can we learn from that tradition and build from it? And then looking at sort of the best practices around planning and zoning and how these places are implemented, looking at more place-based types of regulations that might support that. And then the second biggest question is the environmental health, and this is really what sort of started our discussion with the Cape Cod Commission recently around some of the issues around water quality, and they've identified septic and the issues around nitrogen as a key issue in the Cape, and how can growth or occur connected to existing sewer and wastewater treatment, which Mashpee Commons has. So they actually came to us and said, as we're writing our regional policy plan update, we'd like to look and work with you on how can Mashpee Commons support that growth that's needed on the Cape and connect it to your wastewater treatment plant and allow other areas in town to potentially connect to your wastewater treatment plant to help address these environmental issues. And if you look at it, it's this sort of historical sediment pattern that you find all over New England, and the idea that sewer and infrastructure and water, all of that needs the sort of compact nature to really be cost effective for the infrastructure. And it's interesting when you drive around New England, you see that thickly settled sign, and that occurs, so that sort of is connecting to this environmental issue. And this is not a new thing. For the better part of the last decade, the Sierra Club has been really identifying the building of mixed-use communities and mixed-use neighborhoods as a direct solution to a lot of the environmental challenges that they've been trumpeting for decades. And then you see everyone's looking for walkable schools. This sort of idea of a walkable place in a neighborhood like that, it hits a number of issues that we think we want to see how we can address here in Mashpee and Mashpee Commons. So that's everything from an active lifestyle to locally grown produce and community gardens, and this idea that a connection, a real ownership of these places, these new parks and these new squares can service the community's needs. And this gets us to the idea of housing. Like we said, these I think we're 100% leased. I think there's a waiting list. So folks are interested in living in these places, and when you talk to the Cape Cod Commission and other folks thinking about housing, there is an imbalance, and I'll show you a chart in a few seconds about why that is, about the types of housing that are needed in Mashpee Commons as well as the Upper Cape. And this is not a unique pattern. We're seeing this. Our office does work all throughout New England. We see this in a number of small towns and villages throughout New England. But the idea is, how can Mashpee Commons start to build buildings that are of a scale and a quality that can deliver that housing and fit in with what the community here thinks is the future for Mashpee Commons. And a few months ago, the Cape Cod Commission held a conference called One Cape, and you can look online and find some materials on it. But they've done a very good job going very deep in this issue of housing, this issue of nitrogen and environment, and how can we connect those. And you can see here what's happening is this is the single family home. And one of the things they told us was that there's an imbalance because as folks are aging and they're looking to not mow the lawn anymore or deal with painting the house, there's no housing on the Cape for them to move into, to downsize. So therefore, all of these single-family homes are not really available in the market for families or younger households to move into. So there's an idea here that we need to think about the whole spectrum of housing, from the little apartment studio all the way to the townhouse, and then also how that affects the single-family homes that we already have. And this leads us to really what we're kind of sort of the macro issue is, how can we support the local economy even further? I think it's worth noting that I think there's over 1,000 jobs in Mashpee Commons, and that's a number that when we first did that math, we were quite shocked by. But it's really that some of these places have been here for decades, and then what are the new uses that we want to bring in, and how can that support an economic ecosystem that supports each other, and how does that connect to the larger region? So that's something that might not necessarily be your typical retail store. It might be office. It might be, jobs. How do we involve that into the future of Mashpee Commons? And then what this kind of comes back to the idea of civic life. You know, locating jobs in a place like Mashpee, when you look at the trends and you look at where people are choosing to open businesses, a lot of the times it has civic life and, you know, I can walk someplace nice for lunch, or I can go sit on a park bench. So these start to overlap and collide nicely. And to a large degree, the LL Bean, you know, came here for similar reasons. You know, there's a vibrancy to Mashpee Commons with the bit of the commercial core that's there now. How can we expand on that with the residential and use the residential neighborhoods that might connect to Mashpee Commons to further support the larger economic goals of Mashpee as a town. And then it's the small. And this is why I think, you know, tonight we're really asking you to help us think about the big ideas and the little ideas, like this bandstand. You know, this was an idea that was maybe 6 or 8 months ago came up, and we said, let's get it done for this summer. And it's these little tweaks that provide, you know, continued improvement. So we want to hear that whole spectrum. There's no bad idea at this point. So, you know, these are the summaries, but I think we want to hear your other questions. And what other discussions do we want to dive into as we go through this process together? So the planning process is really about, you know, coordinating ourselves as a community, which you've seen. How many folks have liked the Facebook page? A few. All right, so we're going to be broadcasting a lot of stuff. We're actually streaming live on Facebook right now. But also you signed up for email. So we want to make sure that everyone knows about this, and we'll give you materials to let your friends, families, colleagues know about it as well. So anyone that needs to participate should have easy access to it. Then the next part is engage. How can we come together as a community and actually have an engaging dialogue about this? So this is actually the beginning of that tonight. And then, you know, folks have said, well, what's in the future? Eventually we have to design, what is this place going to look like after we've brought everyone's input into it? What does that look like? And can we come to some consensus about that? And then the last thing, which I know folks are going to want to jump ahead, is how do we implement that? And that's really where I think Mashpee Commons has stumbled. And you know, how do the local community arrive at a vision? And then we get to the hard discussion around how do we actually build this thing? How do we actually make this real? So this is the fun part. This is why we're here tonight, is really to have a dialogue. And right now, the first activity is what we call the big ideas mapping. So everyone's got markers and pens and a map in front of them. There's also a set of instructions on your table that are going to, so if what I say you can't remember, you can read that and it's going to tell you exactly what to do as well. So you could tune out now, but please don't. The big ideas mapping is really about great places are made by many minds with many hands. So, you know, the folks that Mary introduced in the beginning are a few brains. We want all of your help, your knowledge, and your local insights and perspectives to help tell us what does Mashpee Commons need to look like in the future. So, think with your marker. You know, write anything good, anything bad, and there's some questions on the sheet that might help you get started. But I have a feeling, just kind of overhearing some folks prior to starting, that there's probably going to be a lot you want to write down. So if you want a smaller pen, let us know so you can write tinier. But please write in a way that we can look at it later on and understand. And then when we're done with this, we're going to ask a team leader at each table to kind of give us a quick 3, 4, 5 minute overview of what your group discussed and what did you learn? What were your big ideas? So what time is it? All right. So why don't we? I want to give you guys about 20 minutes to have this discussion, and then we'll see how folks make out. Maybe we'll give a little bit more time. And then anyone from Mashpee Commons that you see, if you have questions, just grab one of us and we'll help out. But that's our first activity. And then there's 2 more. You'll see some photos around the edge of the room, and there's board in the front of the room. And there's one more activity that we'll do after this. So this is just to get us warmed up with thinking big. And then there'll be plenty of time for discussion after this first little section. So thank you. Let's get started. Everyone has a full opportunity to give us the input on the other activities tonight. So I don't want to stop you from writing and talking about your map. So feel free to add to it. or continue to refine the ideas you've already been discussing over the next, next activity. There'll be more time to dive back into the map. But we've been talking to each other for about 20 minutes and everyone's been listening to you. So what we want to do now is make sure the big ideas don't get lost. So Erica here from table 1 is going to give us her 2, 3, 4 big ideas that their table talked about, and then we'll probably go counterclockwise. So table 2 should get ready, and your team leader should get your 3 or 4 ideas put together. So Erica, why don't you tell us what you all talked about?
Okay, everyone here except myself and Mary are from Deer Crossing, which is just over there, and their concern is a buffer zone to control the amount of light that's spilling over from Mashpee Commons and also the sound pollution. And just maybe also clearly a visual one, because I've been here 17 years and the population has doubled and the goods and services have followed with that. And you live, Mary, in Mashpee Commons, and she loves living here. And it says that the housing is very equitable, and maybe I think personally, I live over in Quashnet Valley. I find it a little bit high-end, I mean laughably so. And I love the sales, because I like quality, but I don't like traveling 20 minutes to go to Trader Joe's. I would like to see Trader Joe's in Mashpee Commons. I think we have the population. Thank you very much. To add to that, as I commuted to Boston for the first 15, 16, who's counting years that I lived here, and I never, underline never, bought food on Cape Cod. I do now. I hate traveling to Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. And that said, we thought that we needed more green space, more real parks, not just sort of a couple trees where you can take your dog through and lift up the poop, you know. And, George here doesn't want to see 5-story buildings, and I suggested, I lived in Lexington in high school, they decided no more than 2 stories for the downtown area. And I know that all across the United States there's a revisioning of what downtowns will look like, because essentially they haven't changed since 1920, except in places like Lexington where they made sure that they didn't change, then they enforced that. So we basically have 2 stories here. I don't miss 5 stories or more, you know, having spent most of my life in Boston, but I wouldn't be opposed to it like George is definitely, he's almost out of here. Personally, I want to see a larger picture. I want to know what Cape Cod is to Boston and the South Shore. I want to know what Mashpee is to the rest of Cape Cod. I want to know with my friends in Boston who told me, oh yeah, they were talking about Boston to be a place where it could be a bedroom town for people commuting. I'd like to know how they were commuting, if they weren't just driving, you know. And transportation, what transportation? I don't see the transportation. And I'm not walking on those sidewalk-less places. And I think that's almost it. We wanted a cultural center. I would like to see, you know, a couple swimming pools that, you know, didn't overprice themselves or turn into a disaster. An open-air cinema, I loved it when they just threw up something and showed it this summer. Whole Foods, also Trader Joe's. So buffer areas, no townhouses, and then I think that controls. I think that's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Erica. All right, a round of applause for table 1. Table 2, who's going to talk?
I don't know. I have a very loud voice. I taught for 40 years. I don't think I need it. There's nothing like being in a high school classroom. All right? You have to be heard. As I mentioned, in fact, this whole side of the room is Deer Crossing. So, of course, the main thing that we are interested in is the buffer zone, because many years ago they told us it was only, they wouldn't be closer than 40 feet. But when you see that little green thing off of Joe's Fishing, and you look, there's not a lot of room there, and you're going to be very close to us. But the other thing we thought about, which is parking. And, you know, I mean, there isn't enough parking, and they're talking about, gee, we have parking over at Stop and Shop. You know, and that, well, we might as well walk from Deer Crossing. And also across the road where Panera is, you own all that over there. well, why couldn't you have a big parking area with some shuttles, all right? It wouldn't just be great for those of us who are older and don't walk as much, but also people with young children would like it when you could get into a little shuttle and you could go and you could be back and forth. So there just isn't much parking. I was over there today and I went around a long time before I found a space that I didn't have to walk an amazing amount of time. And also, we are concerned about walking trails and running trails. And most of the stores in Mashpee Commons are very expensive. It'd be really nice if you had more affordable boutiques, you know what I mean? Because like it's $40-something for a little grandmother, you know, a little child's dress or something. You know, I mean, that's really a lot. I mean, I have to go to Carter's where I do go. And also, another affordable restaurant besides Panera would be nice. You know. And a breakfast place, yes. A breakfast, a full breakfast place.
Great, thank you. Yes. Table 3, and we're kind of microphone wire constrained here, so if you need the mic, just come on up.
Maybe not.
Okay.
They're making me speak because nobody else wanted to. I didn't realize I was infiltrating Deer Crossing area. I'm from the Mashpee Neck area. We agree with lots of what has already been spoken. More affordable shopping, lots of green space, buffered areas. We came up with Trader Joe's as well. Lots more parking is needed, more community spaces expanding, like where the community does Oktoberfest, maybe having more opportunity for outdoor movies and other activities like that for the community. In some of the gray areas that can be developed, a mix of housing, different types of housing for young people, single-family homes for families, and places for older folks to go to downsize. So a wide mix so that everybody can live here, but in each of the housing areas, maybe make it more like a village center, so they each have parks and various amenities, stores, shops, something where they can eat, or also shuttles to other areas in Mashpee Commons and even South Cape Village. A hotel, we said, was a good idea. 4 stories, I think, was voted for zoning, so everybody was good with having a hotel and keeping lots of conservation land.
Great.
Did I catch everything?
Boston Commons.
I'm sorry?
Boston Commons.
Like Boston Commons. Parks. Why? What's a great idea.
Great, thank you for your I'm abandoning the microphone, so are we okay? Okay, so table 4, let's go talk.
Okay. Well, we echo a lot of what was said there, apart from the hotel and more. But anyway, we want to have, and I think this would be a great idea, is a bike path, number 1, that would eventually connect to the bike path in Falmouth and that connects all the way along the Cape. That would be a great draw, I think. Secondly, the area off of the Jobs Fishing Road there was really so close to us. We just really don't want commercial there. It's right there where you're, yeah. If there has to be housing, fine, but not commercial. Okay, that's a big sticking point for us. We also thought that in order to connect over to 151 from the main shopping area, there should be a bridge, a walking bridge. Because, I mean, we're talking, you know, if it can be done in the future, whatever, but that's what would be the best thing, because that would really connect those two, because crossing there is hell, if you've ever done it. And we would like to keep the commons with a rural feel to it, so that the architecture would fit with the rest of the Cape, with some more green spaces maybe a little playground for the kids, to kind of make it a little bit more kid-friendly. I don't have kids, but it would be nice, okay? Let's see. What have I missed here? Just basically to keep it family-oriented. As far as the stores go, we're fine with it. Some people would like a little bit more affordable kind of stores, but not the big bulk stores. We really don't need any more of those, I don't think. Cultural. It would be nice, I think, to have a place where we could have like ballroom dancing, maybe once a week. Because I don't ballroom dance, but anyway, I thought a lot of people that do, and I think it would be nice if they wouldn't have to drive, especially in the wintertime, all over. And I think it's a great outlet for people, especially older people, and everybody, basically. I don't know how feasible that would be, but I think it would be a great idea. Also, I think that, and of course this has to go through the town, but I think that the town hall should be at Mashpee Commons. Because if you're going to have people that live here and don't want to drive everywhere, why can't they have the library, the post office and the town hall and everything in one place? It makes more sense to me. Anyway. So I think that's about it.
We have some in here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let's keep our clockwise momentum. All right, no table.
The no table is SRO here. So we tend to agree a lot about adding cultural center. We looked at what's Mashpee's role in helping to solve some of the opiate issues. And I employ young people, so I'm always hearing we're bored when it's off season. And so finding ways to provide things to do for people off season in particular. So indoor type things, maybe a community center that might have tennis or racquetball or handball or various activities that would be for a wide range of age groups. So, and along with that then, thinking of the Commons as a cultural center, not just a shopping center. So kind of breaking away from all just shopping, but can we go there for concerts? Can we go there for activities beyond, fighting the tourists all summer for a parking space? Also, we talked about, again, we have a representative of Deer Crossing as well, and so what is the plan for, that buffer zone? That's an important issue, I think, that is probably going to be echoed quite a bit. The other thing is green space. So how do we not just provide green space, but provide ecologically responsible green space that maybe we could even extend into being a catalyst for change all over the Cape? Can we do things in such a way that we actually become the example and set a high standard for how we deal with water issues and how much green space to pavement, how much porous and non-porous. So we start to think about maybe garden spaces even, and using bioswales, which you talked about some of the drainage and water issues. Can we do some things that actually help to filter water and move it appropriately?
Great, thank you. There's a lot of folks from Deer Crossing. How many folks have ever walked to Mashpee Commons? Is it a pleasant walk?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, we'll come back to that, but I just wanted to... All right, sorry, table 5.
First and foremost, I want to thank the Mashpee Commons for actually being here, because if you know Mashpee, Main Street is, quite frankly, nothing. So thank you. A couple things that we came up with that we brainstormed along with the rest of you are sidewalks around the perimeter. This also incorporates the bike trails that I think Table 3 had mentioned. So more ways to get around, whether running, biking, stuff like that, hiking. More green space, whether that's near Deer Crossing or somewhere else. Right now, we have a lovely park, but quite frankly, there's not much other than a couple trees. A couple other things that we have were parking. We know that unfortunately we can't go underground with our parking, so we can build up. Hypothetically, we could do a garage of some sort. The other thing I think need to incorporate is the Mashpee heritage. We have the Wampanoag tribe that is not connected at all to the commons. That needs to be a thing. There is no art, there is no culture. Most of the buildings are relatively stale, quite frankly. So we need to work on something in that regard. And yeah, more activities and entertainment. A rec center would be nice as well. I think that's good.
Great.
We have one more point.
Yeah, of course.
Possibility. I like your idea of tying some of the infrastructure to some of the surrounding areas. For instance, I'm in Deer Crossing also, who probably down the road now are going to be experiencing wastewater issues. If we could tie that into Mashpee Commons, I'm sure there's other areas that would like to look at that also.
Yeah.
Maintain a dialogue there.
Yeah, good point. Well, thank you, Table 5. All right, Table 6.
No, I guess not. So our table came up with a lot of the ideas that so many of the other tables came up with. We added a few more things to that as well. We definitely like the idea of the walking trails. I think there's that area of the pond over to the right of the Rotary. You can take a look at that. That's not really connected, but it is a beautiful space. It would be nice. We talked about having access to making a viable, safe walking space and then connecting that somehow to the commons. Yeah, bridge would be fabulous. For somebody else who said that, and we're going to think big. Why not throw the bridge in? But some really good lighting and a safe place for us to be able to walk and run if we wanted to. More live workspaces. So I think people were on the right track with that to be able to do that. I think one of the challenges that we keep hearing is we want more affordable stores, or stores that are offering more affordable things. And so we also have to remember that so many of the merchants that are in the commons that honor that not big box store are also the entrepreneurs who are trying to make a life and raise a family here on the Cape as well. So there's this dichotomy. So is there a way that we can meet the challenge to create affordable spaces in which families can live and work here and grow, so that we're not losing so many young people? And I think the statistic I read today was by 2045, the population will be significantly older, with a lot less, almost half of that population of young people gone. So to speak to that, we were looking at recreation center, and also the idea of having a like Cape Space, if anybody's familiar with that in Hyannis, for businesses that are not able to provide their own resources. And so whether you're a nonprofit and you're trying to call together a board meeting, or you're somebody who works from home but needs a professional space in which to meet, but you can't afford a monthly rent, Cape Space offers meeting spaces. So much like the library, but anybody here who's a business knows that unless you're a nonprofit that gets to sign up in advance here for a space, you're not able to do that. So is that, again, that's a viable business, but also meeting the needs of the community, and for young people who might want to start a business and be able to do that. Was it Ray? Ray had the idea of the Innovation Center based on kind of like Boston. And again, if we're looking at ways to be able to bring young people or to keep them thriving, to provide an innovation space. I loved Melinda's idea of tiny houses. So again, there's this idea of a move towards a tiny house. Is there an opportunity to build a small tiny house community? Again, kind of with a residential flair, with some green and open space. How much housing do you need, or how can you accommodate that?
Widows and young people.
Widows and young
That's
people.
what they were called in Europe. That's what they're called, widows and young people.
And then Patty also had a great idea of maybe, again, to meet the needs of some of the people who do have wares, and maybe artisans, some kind of like craft kiosk opportunity to bring some of that into the area. I think. Did I miss anything, group? Performing Arts Center, of course. Again, something along the lines of either Pilgrim Hall or the Cultural Arts Center. And again, something that would have physical art as well as performing arts. Does it have an opportunity for an indoor-outdoor kind of space, but where we would be able to promote that throughout the community, and a community center as well.
Also, you know, having the Commons sponsor and public art in the Commons.
Right.
Bring in, I don't think there's any. Is there any at all in the Commons?
The library.
But it would be nice to have things around the Commons that was supporting, you know, the Cape is a huge arts community, you know, per capita, probably one of the biggest around. It would be great to have the Commons support local artists.
Also with the housing, with like the zero lot line housing for single-family homes, I don't know if that's ever come into discussion or not, but there's a good example of it down in the new zone at New Seabury, Mashpee, you know, just to have, do have space, but you also are not paying like a condo fee, but it's almost like a condo, but you have your own space, your own single-family home.
Yeah, great.
I think the only other thing that came up as part of that too, and it was a little bit of the discussion about keeping things affordable, was also looking at some of the services that already do exist. And people said that they didn't really want to travel far. So looking at services that are already being delivered, and again, thinking about even our nonprofits, is there a way to be able to approach them, to include them, to be a better part of the Commons? And again, by pulling them into a busier area, helping businesses to be more viable. So it's not necessarily replacing or building bigger businesses or more, but including and helping those businesses to thrive.
Great. Our next table 6. 3 more tables. So in the interest of time, another table's already set it. Just
Professor,
one more.
I would love to jump in. Can I please?
Are you this table? Or?
I'm at a table that.
Can you just hold on 1 second and we'll come back to that? But, all right, go ahead, table.
Okay, very quickly. We like to see the post office move where it is.
Here.
Parking is crazy.
Or
We're putting a footbridge basically where the light is on 151. If you take a look at where the Catholic Church is on Steeple Street, if you follow Steeple Street down to the other end, we'd like to see a Protestant church at the other end. Right there.
I swear I didn't have anything to do with it.
The sliver between Job's Fishing Lane and Deer Crossing, we thought that'd be a great place for very small homes, maybe around 1,300 square feet with a 1-car garage, so people could buy a home here as well as just rent homes and space. It would give you another dimension of parking. Some cultural space. Most of us here, a lot of us have retired, and a lot of us have hobbies, and just, it would be nice if we had some stores that kind of were looking towards hobbies. Maybe a quilting store, maybe a music store, some stores that would open up our thoughts. Parking, I think we all agree parking is a problem, and we're in favor of raised parking, and maybe raised with solar panels on top, which you've already done to help the space.
or a roof garden.
And that's about it.
Great. I know there's a few folks over here that didn't have a table as well, so you guys can go next after this table, okay?
Can you guys speak up? It's a little hard to hear out here.
Yeah, we can use the mic as well.
But I have something to add.
Okay, we'll do this table, and then a no table?
We're not a table.
Not a table, okay. All right, so this table, and then the last table.
Hi, my name is Valerie, and there's 3 of us at this table, and 2 of us actually live here in Mashpee Commons. So a lot of what we have to say has to do specifically with the residents in mind of the Commons. So I'm a stay-at-home mom here in Mashpee Commons, and I also teach at Inner Glow Yoga. So I'm pretty much within this area 24/7. I walk with my toddler constantly. A lot of you might have even seen me. I'm constantly walking laps with my toddler every day. And number one, I'm going to stick to the three. Number one, it needs to be pedestrian friendly. It makes me nervous, honestly, to walk these streets. I've even counted how many people just blow through stop signs. I think what it is there's a lot of distracted drivers around here because there's a lot going on and people don't know where they're going and they're looking for shops. I don't think it's so much of an intentional thing, but I've seen people drive up over sidewalks multiple times a week. I've had to jump out of the way of cars with my toddler. It's just not safe. So number one, an idea is to make a grassway from Starbucks along Market Street, from Starbucks to Fountain Street, and just limit that to pedestrian only, and the drivers can go around the periphery. And if you look at the parking spots on Market Street between those blocks, there's really not many parking spots. I think that would make it a lot safer. It would add greenway. You could have some paths that go through a gazebo right at the center where Steeple Street is. So that's just number one, more pedestrian friendly and added grass. The second one, more attractive residences to young families. There's a couple of us families here that do have toddlers, which is nice, but a daycare for residents would be nice. Also, maybe a fitness center for the residents that live here that's included in the rent. And third, which a lot of people talk about, is parking. I think, this area right here, it's a big open parking lot, maybe add a parking garage there. That way people going to the movie theater don't have to park and take up all of our resident parking, which isn't actually resident parking, but it's our only allowed place to park. Then they'd be closer to the movie theater and the restaurants on that end as well. So we echo everybody with the parking. And that's my three, sticking to it.
Great, thank you. No, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll try to make this as quick as possible. Our big things were an integrated greenway system. I'm with the planning board and we've been kind of working with Mashpee Commons on this. And it's not just to have some greenway and some walking trails and things, but it's to make it a recreational destination. So that it brings you, that's what draws you to this area, and then it integrates you with the commercial aspect, and then there's some synergy that gets created. And I do have some maps and things and proposed ideas for that. Parking was a big issue, and everyone at my table I think was a fan of a parking garage, some level. The higher and the bigger capacity, the better, I suppose. There was an idea for to have a little trolley that takes people around because of some of the issues of crossing 151. An elevated footbridge, again, has come up. So those were kind of, and yeah, a seasonal ice skating rink would be great. It could be a water park in the summertime and ice skating rink. And there would be Christmas lights, and then there would be music, and then there would be people, and it would be fun. So, okay, I think that's
great. Thank you. Thank you all at the table. So I know we kind of were short on tables, so I know there was the woman in the back. Would you like to take a comment, and then we'll have one more gentleman's comment.
One thing that I didn't hear a lot about sustainability. I did hear someone mention it'd be nice to have some solar panels. I would think that that would be really an important goal for any expansion that you're doing, is that you consider the sustainability, consider the environment. But what I didn't hear come up, maybe one person mentioned it, is the affordable housing aspect of this. And I know that in this present expansion that you're involved in now, there was a certain amount of affordable housing that was supposed to be incorporated into that, and I was really pretty excited to hear that. Because I use the Commons, my family uses the Commons. I like to shop local. I will shop at Motion before I will go to LLB. I will shop at Embran. These are my neighbors, these are my friends. And it's a very convenient place. I was very excited about the affordable housing lottery that was coming up for this development. And wanted very much to get my daughter involved in that. My daughter is 25 years old. She is very bright,
intellectual young lady. She's disabled in a way that she cannot drive a car, so this would be perfect for her. Like, awesome, you know, she could live and work in the same place. We were really disappointed to find that the bar was set so high for low income, I wouldn't have even been able to apply for it. So it wasn't really low income. It was kind of, you know, you had to make so much money that she was never going to be able to qualify for that. And in fact, her application got kicked out. So that was really disappointing. And I'm going to be really disappointed if this community doesn't embrace that low-income housing and getting more housing for to keep our families here. Otherwise, this is just going to be more gentrification. I mean, that, you know, we can bring in other people that can afford to live here, but the people that have been here for generations, yeah, I recognize that picture, the first one that you showed with Christie's Market and with Mary LeClaire's Bank, and I mean, I grew up here. I've been here my whole life, you know, but my kids can't stay here. My disabled daughter can't stay here. And from what I understand, you know, you're trying to push out the affordable housing piece of this and not be accountable for that. Now, I personally won't stand for that. Then there's also, you know, zoning regulations are there for a reason. They're protecting our environment. I don't know how we can do all this building and still protect our aquifer and our water. So I hope that people, while you're getting excited, because this is a campaign, don't kid yourself, this is a campaign by Mashpee Commons to win the hearts and minds of the town and maybe flaunt a little bit the affordable housing aspect and the zoning. You know, we should forgive that, but we gotta remain diligent about these things, because when the affordable housing is for other people but not us, and when, you know, the zoning is relaxed so that, you know, they're able to do whatever they want, we're going to be disappointed in the end. I do appreciate that Mashpee Commons is letting us come and talk about this and throw our ideas out there, and I hope that they're listening. But I also hope that they know that these regulations about low-income housing and zoning are important to us.
Last comment, and then can you just hold 1 second?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you all set?
No, I
Is there a response to that comment?
No, I was going to make a comment of my own, because no one has mentioned traffic.
I did.
And I understand you've mentioned parking, because it's hard to find a parking space, but every new business, every house comes with more traffic, and I don't see anything in your plan to account for how this traffic is going to be accommodated. I mean, in 151, making a turn onto 151 in the summertime, forget it. You know, it adds 20 minutes.
That's a township thing, though. That's not going to be the commons. That's not the commons thing.
Yes, but how do you get to the commons? You have to include the environmental impact of having more cars coming to all the businesses that are going to be open. I mean, what's the point? You want more people.
I appreciate the comment on traffic. I'm actually floored it took that long to come up.
I am too.
But traffic and parking, we know, everyone knows those are issues. And remember the slide I sent where it's implementation? If you think about traffic, there's good traffic, like good cholesterol, bad traffic. And if you think about it that way, most vibrant, walkable main streets, you know, and neighborhoods, they have a little bit of congestion. And I think managing parking and planning traffic is an implementation problem. And you know, I think it's certainly something on our agenda to discuss and figure out. But the question is what is that traffic serving? And how, and then can we, you know, we know there'll be more traffic if there's more growth, but how do we manage that better? And we can go really deep on that. We definitely know what we need to talk about. I just want to, we're going to run out of time. I want to respect everyone's evenings. So last comment here, and then we're going to transition to our next activity.
Raise your hands. Who has a retail business in the Commons?
Who has a retail business in the Commons? Who has a business in the Commons? Yeah, here, why don't you?
I said, who has a retail business in the Commons? Please raise your hand. Who lives in the Commons? Who has lived in the Commons over 10 years? Okay. All right, I heard a certain point of view, in my opinion, very skewed towards Deer Crossing. I've been here 10 years. I know Danny, Marie, like family. I know B, I know all these people have retail stores here. And you're talking about low-income stores. If you know the overhead it takes to run a business, to be part of their families, promotion and so forth, that's what I want to support. Okay? If you want to go to a dollar store, you want to have Christmas tree shop, you hop on a local shuttle and you go into Hyannis. You mentioned arts, theater, and so forth. Well, I'm a member of the Katuitt Center for the Arts for 20 years. I go there all the time. Beautiful venue. We hire it out, you go there, ballroom dancing, whatever you want, you can do there. Maybe thinking about some shuttle systems from Deer Crossing to these areas, and so forth. I also want to have a voice to protect my retail family and friends here. And also myself. To be honest with you, I'm not a kid, I'm 57 years old, but I'm upper echelon, professional, I'll be honest with you, with disposable income. But I use it and spend it here in the Commons every day of the week, and so forth. So I think we need to think about protecting our retail stores, which is very important to me. You know, look at other options. You know, I love kids and so forth. Yeah, we have the Boys and Girls Clubs over there. We're thinking about rec centers and senior centers. Well, to me, that's also part of the town issues. You know, so think both ways. You know, think about the stores, the families, their families, and people that put their livelihood and blood every day into the Mashpee Commons. That's who I'm here for too. And I have my list of things I would love. You know, I've been looking for a townhouse here for 10 years. You know, probably not going to happen. Fine, I'll live with that. But there's so much around us. I mean, the Roach Brothers and so forth, a lot of things you're thinking about in terms of community centers and so forth, have them over there. There's so much space over there. Build a shuttle over there. You know, I'm just trying to have a voice, different point of view for the retail space here. People like myself, you know, been here 11 years, and I consider myself, you know, family in the Commons. So I want my voice also heard.
If I could just
Very small.
You're getting bonus points.
Bonus
You're asking,
points.
You're going to own me. All right,
I
so
have
last.
been in Mashpee Commons for almost 25 years. I see some of my customers here. When I hear people that say that there's nothing affordable in Mashpee Commons, you have to look at your community. And if you want to support and you expect Mashpee Commons and the merchants that are in Mashpee Commons to do events that are community-based and everything else, you also have to take the time to walk into these stores other than when you're looking for a charitable donation. And you do have to check them out and see that there is a lot of affordable shopping in Mashpee Commons. It is not all expensive. And if you're looking at the parking issue, if you go to downtown Falmouth, if you go to downtown Chatham, if you go to downtown Boston, parking is an issue for any place that is viable and vibrant. Should we all be looking to have better parking? Yes. So when you're meeting your friends to go on a golfing outing or go on a shopping outing and you park 3 cars in Mashpee Commons and jump into one to go off because this is convenient and central, you might want to think about all of your neighbors who are trying to get parking.
All right, well, thank you, everyone.
I try to make mine as short as possible.
So everyone, I can tell everyone's very passionate about Mashpee Commons. We could probably talk about this for another hour, but there are a few other things that I think will be helpful, fun, and engaging for us to continue this dialogue and look at the Commons in a different way. So everyone's been sitting for a while.